Okay, so now that we've talked about the pressure, conflict, and transformation, we're going to talk about some key vocabulary for this week. Now, we were working inside the powerful space where something goes wrong and the story begins to move. So let's go over some of these words that we've already heard, and now we're going to sharpen our understanding of them. So conflict is the central problem or pressure pushing against the character. It's the force that disrupts their comfort and creates movement in the story. And remember, conflict is not always just pure evil. It is formative. Stakes. Now, stakes answer the question, what could be lost if something goes badly? The higher the stakes, the more the audience leans in. Now we have pressure. Pressure is the growing force acting on the character or the situation. So just like in the natural world, pressure builds and eventually something must give. Then we have resistance. Resistance is what pushes back against the character's goal. It is what makes the journey difficult. And just like muscles in the body, resistance is what builds strength. Now, we're going to expand our story into the story lens. We're going to move into some deeper storycraft language. Let's talk about antagonistic forces. So an antagonistic force is anything that opposes the main character. And here's something very important. This is not always a villain. Most of the time, the antagonist is the villain, right? But sometimes we have an antagonistic force, such as nature could be what's not allowing something to happen. Society, time. Maybe they don't have enough time, or they're battling time in some way or another, or even the character's own fear. Okay, stories become powerful when the opposition feels real and meaningful and somewhat relational. Then we talked about internal versus external conflict, right? External conflict happens outside the character, a storm, an enemy, a locked door. Internal conflict happens inside of the character. This is the doubts, the fears, a false belief about themselves or their world. The strongest stories almost always have both of those. Then we have rising action. So rising action is the stretch of the story where tension steadily builds. Okay, the pressure increases, the problems multiply, the path becomes more and more difficult. This is the long climb before the breaking point. Okay, then we have opposition. Opposition is the specific force standing in the character's way at any given moment. It is what keeps the story from resolving too quickly, because if nothing pushes back, nothing changes. Okay, so why even peaceful stories need tension? Let's just kind of go over this a little bit. So we've already talked about it, but as a summary, sometimes people think if my story is calm or gentle, I don't really need conflict. It's just a peaceful story. And that's great. Even peaceful stories require tension, though, in some sort of a way for it to be a story. The tension might be quiet. It might be emotional. It might be internal. But without some form of pressure, there's no movement. And without movement, there's no story. So let's hit the other part of our vocab. This is transformation and archetypes. If you've never heard about it, I'm going to introduce you to that now. So, pressure alone is not the point. We talked about this. Transformation is, right? So, character transformation is the meaningful change that happens inside of a character over the course of a story. It is the movement from who they were to who they become, right? Then we have the character arc, okay? A character arc is that full path of that interchange. And the most powerful arcs move from false belief toward truth through challenges, choices, and growth. Now let's talk about choice. Choice is the moment when the character actively decides how they will respond under that pressure. This is where the transformation becomes real, because characters are not only shaped by what happens to them, but by what they choose to do next. Now let's talk about archetypes. This is a big idea for this week. So This is something ancient. This is something deeply human. We have been using archetypes, these archetypes, since the beginning of any kind of storytelling. Okay. There are recurring character roles that appear across stories and cultures and time periods. And a key understanding of them is that archetypes are not stereotypes. Okay. They are patterns that humans recognize in life itself. So let's talk about a few that you can kind of notice everywhere. We have the hero, okay? The hero is the character who is called to grow, change, or step into courage. They do not start perfect. In fact, they rarely start ready, okay? We have the guide or the mentor, right? The mentor helps the hero see what they cannot yet see. They offer wisdom, tools, or perspective, you know, like Yoda. But importantly, they do not walk the path for the hero. You know, Gandalf, all those types of characters, right? Dumbledore, right? That's our guides. Then we have the shadow, okay? The shadow represents the opposing force. It's sometimes a villain, like you have, let's think, Voldemort from Harry Potter. You know, just famous villains that we all know. Sometimes, though, it's a mirror of what the hero could become if they choose the wrong path. Sometimes that in and of itself is enough as a villainous type antagonistic force for them. And it's like, I don't want to become that person, so I'm going to go this way. And then we have the threshold guardian. This figure tests whether the hero is truly ready to move forward. They guard the doorway to the next stage of growth. They're not always enemies. Sometimes they are tests in disguise. You have the ally. Allies support the hero along the journey, right? The friends, the buddy, the team, okay? The people that are the elders that are like, oh, I've been down this path. Here's some wisdom, or here's a tool, or maybe it's a grandparent or someone that has some form of something to help. Even if it's just love and support and good, kind words. They help bring perspective and sometimes courage to the hero and they don't have to, the hero is not faced to feel like they're doing this alone. Anybody that's like that. It could be a pet. Okay, so why do archetypes exist across cultures? You're going to find these roles appearing again and again across countries, across centuries, across completely different kinds of stories. Why? Because archetypes reflect patterns of our human experience, right? Our relatability, our relation to the story. It's something that we can all look at and relate to. That's what stories are made for. Right? They're rooted in how people grow, struggle, connect, relate, and change in real life. So as you move into your work this week, also remember that conflict isn't there to destroy the character. It's there to shape them. So, and archetypes aren't random story decorations. They are the deep repeating roles that humans have recognized for as long as we have told stories. Okay, guys, now you're going to watch a video with Miss Catherine and Monet about volcanoes, because this is a perfect example as to how pressure builds and what happens, you know. So it's a fun sciencey video that just kind of explains volcanoes, which I know you guys know what volcanoes are, but if you could kind of put on a storycraft lens and think of volcanoes in a way almost like the pressure in a story, right? That's what you're going to do. You're going to watch a video. You'll follow some prompts that they are going to give you to write in your journals. And then hopefully by the end of this, I'll be able to listen to your stories. I'm so glad I got to work with you guys. You're wonderfully creative, very kind, sweet kids, guys. And I was so blessed to be able to work with you guys for the time that I did. And for now, I'm gonna have to hand off to Miss Catherine and Monet because my little girl is sick right now, and I need to spend some more time with her at home during this period. And I just can't wait to hear your stories and how it all turns out. And thank you again. I hope you have a great week, a great term, and a great summer. Bye.